All right. So this is I mentioned that Lily's doing this assignment about the over-incarceration in the U.S. and so
I'm talking to you?
Yeah, it's being recorded.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Do you consent to being recorded?
I don't have to. One party consent's okay in Illinois. Did you know that?
I prefer that. I prefer the actual consent. Anyway, I do know that because you told me. So I just thought it'd really be neat to have a first person narrative. So she's doing all the statistics and stuff, why it is, the privatization of prison, the 3 strikes law, but there's kind of a human aspect to it. So I guess the first part is, do you come across anybody who is, one of these who was thrown in for, some kind of 3 strikes or, war on crime or something, who shouldn't have been in there? It was just like rotting away.
Not per se. A lot of the people that were in there were people that unfortunately were victim of the mandatory minimums that were put in during the Clinton era. So, regardless of a real minimal amount of, say, possession of drugs or dealing drugs. Yeah. I'll give you one example. A guy that used to cut my hair got caught with 6 8-balls. Yeah. And got a 20-year sentence for that. And he had served about almost 3/4 of it. So another thing that's unfortunate about the federal system is you're supposed to get 15% good time credit, but it only works out to 12.5% because of the way they do the math. It actually got changed on this First Step Act, which you might want to, which just got passed at the end of December of this past year. That's the whole thing that Jared Kushner and Trump were behind, that you might want to look at. That actually does have a lot of relief for sentencing reform and whatnot. But what I was saying is that guy that got that 20-year sentence, he's only going to get 3 years off tops for good time, so he's going to serve 17 years of that.
And what was his story? He was just a regular guy.
He was a guy that grew up in a tough neighborhood and didn't have a lot of opportunity and dealt drugs. There's a lot of these guys. I mean, the recidivism rate, which is the rate of repeat, people committing crimes multiple times, is high for that because they get out, whether they're down a year, 5 years, 15 years, they go back to that same environment. There isn't a lot of opportunity for them.
It's probably even less than when they win it, I'd assume, that the incarceration doesn't help their employability or...
No, it's a huge detriment. I was talking to the people at the halfway house, and they said, do you think it's tougher or easier now for these people coming out, to try to start a business or whatever? I said, that's the most ridiculous question I've ever heard. And he said, well, why is that? I said, it's 10 times harder. How are these people supposed to get a bank loan or something like this? Forget about the fact that it's tough if you have no marks on your credit or any sort of checkered past. These guys are coming out of incarceration with a felony conviction. Nobody's going to touch them with a 10-foot pole. Right. And he's like, well, you can be bitter or you can be better. I said, well, I think I'm better, but whether I think I'm bitter or I think I'm better is really irrelevant. I can tell you that the people on the outside have a very specific opinion of people that are coming out of jail. Right. And unfortunately, I can't persuade them or either way. And I think these people need to be prepared for that they're going to have to lean on friends and family hard if they're expecting to basically, reintegrate back into society and be meaningful and not resorting to criminal activity.
Yeah, so
that's a reality.
Right. What they say to that, do they acknowledge that, or they?
Well, he kind of sloughed it off because he didn't want the people to be,
discouraged.
Right, but I mean, I don't think selling them false hope is helping them. I think they need to be prepared. Right. I said, I'm dealing with that. Right. I said, I'll be happy to go to the top 6 banks with you, and I have a good education, I have a solid background, I own multiple companies for years, very successful. There's not a chance in hell they'd get near me with a 10-foot pole. I'd be lucky to even open a checking account there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's obviously an issue. So, what about the impact on the family overall. I mean, this is obviously one of this incarceration, I think, is ripping up families.
It's enormous. I mean, it's enormous when the proceeding, when they're going through trial or going through their plea or whatever it is, and when they ultimately go to jail and are incarcerated, and then when they get out. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of times they're huge liabilities for the family, financially and otherwise. And I just think a lot of the family basically abandons these people after a certain amount of time. I mean, I was talking to a lot of people in there that have been down for 5 years or more, and kind of once you hit that 5-year threshold, if you were married, you're probably divorced. If you had business partners or good friends or whatever, they probably moved on with their lives, and you're a kind of an afterthought.
Right.
And that's a sad reality.
So you saw that a lot, this 5-year kind of threshold?
3 to 5 years. If you went beyond that, the odds of your family and your close friends, as sad as that is,
right,
abandoning you is pretty high.
Right. So what do they do when they, if you've been in there for this 10 years? I mean,
I don't think they know what to do. That's why they're scared. They
Right.
become, that's why a lot of these people are, they use that word institutionalized. A lot of these guys don't want to leave because they don't know what to do.
Right.
It's not like there's a lot of gainful employment for these people. A lot of them don't have any real skills.
Right.
A lot of these people, believe it or not, even turn down the halfway house because they'd rather just stay where they're at for the last 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, whatever it is, which to me is shocking. I mean,
Do they have a community in there, or why would they turn on the halfway house?
Just because they have their routine in there,
Right.
They don't have to worry about anything. Everything's provided. I mean, when you go to a halfway house, they'll give you a room and they'll provide meals, but like all your other stuff needs to be provided for, and they're encouraging you to go out and get a job.
Right.
So, I mean, that may be just as simple as having bus fare to go to do interviews or stuff like that, and these people don't even have money for bus fare.
So the halfway home. But what if you show up to the halfway home without 2 cents to rub together? What do you do?
Sorry.
You just walk.
I mean, you have your 2 meals, and but I mean, you can't even have toiletries, anything like that. There's even the basics.
Huh.
And the halfway house is a mishmash of all walks of criminal life. These are people that were in highs and medium and low facilities that have come into here, as well as people that were in camps that are real, minimal risk.
Right.
You have child molesters. You have all sorts of stuff in there that,
Right. Wow. So the halfway house, in some ways, even rougher, or have you not really
Correct.
experienced that? Or
I mean, I've been fortunate enough where I'm at and people I've had to deal with, but when I'm there, I basically just stay in my room.
right. I'm sure not a place to make.
Yeah, you're not trying to make a lot of friends.
Right. What about the impact of the family? Were any of those folks like providers before they left and left their family?
Well, they were providing through their criminal enterprise, I'm guessing. It's like a professional athlete that hits it big in the NFL. He's got all these people hangers on. Well, a lot of these guys were the main breadwinners of their family and extended family. And that's another reason why when the money runs out, they leave them behind.
Yeah. Was there any kind of rehab value, or what did they try to do?
There's no rehab. There's no rehabilitative value.
What about
that's a total
That's a farce. What about like trying to teach them the GRE and stuff?
Well, there are some people that GED. There are
sorry.
people that took their GED to get their high school diploma. That's true. There were classes, and they did offer classes for driving trucks and buses to teach them that skill and working on engines and stuff like that. So there was a little vocational training there, but for the most part, it was it was punitive, and there was little to no effort put in giving them any sort of life skills.
Right.
that wasn't a priority.
Well, you had told the story when, like, you know, when you were going through the lawsuits and stuff, like one of the guys was offering to, you know, beat up whoever was suing you. But it just strikes me that there's got to be a whole, like, different, like, there's a whole, you know, extra legal system that's probably going on in
What do you mean by that?
jails. And, well, I mean, that's not the way, you know, going in, it wasn't the way you typically handled things. I mean, you know, you went to law school, it's, you know, believe in the rule of law and the general. I mean, the justice system has its flaws, but I think for the most part we operated within that system. It seems like, you know, in a lot of the groups, there's, you know, be it someone who was a drug kingpin or whatever, it was like they were calling the police or, you know, hiring attorneys if they had altercations.
Oh, they would just handle things their own way.
Right, but
and
it
that's
seems
how they
like,
do them in there. That's how a lot of it's done in there too.
right, so I assume after you've spent a number of time, that becomes kind of normal. That's the way you look.
Right. Well, that's the way things are done, and that's the only way they know how.
Right.
And
So, I mean, that's pretty contrary to being a normal member of
well,
society.
that's the point.
Sure.
Is that you know, and when you do the intake at the halfway house, you have to go through this battery of questions that they ask you, because they're trying to assess the chance of you know, committing the crimes again or whatever. And, you know, unfortunately, a lot of these guys just test off the charts. You know, do they have a strong family foundation? No. Were they down for a certain amount of years? Yes. You know, all these check marks lead to them basically going down the same path.
Right.
I mean, the odds are so overwhelmingly stacked against these people. It's shocking. It really is. I mean, and I would never have had any inclination or, you know, or knowledge of this area, you know, but for having to deal with it. And
Right.
I'm actually even a lot of guys in my similar circles that, you know, were doctors or lawyers or people that had degrees. You know, these degrees are stripped from
Right.
them. Well, what's a doctor, you know, who made a mistake and served a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever he is, what's he supposed to do when he gets out? Because, you know, all those years of training are gone.
Right.
Yeah, he made a bad decision. It obviously landed him there. But should that guy be precluded from practicing medicine, even under a much more rigid, you know, framework? I don't know. But a lot of these guys, lawyers, same thing. Their law degrees script, you know.
Right. So how much of that is the, like you had started the conversation, societal, and how much of that is societal bias, and how much of that is things like the legal system where they're stripping these, how much of it is, you know, learning bad lessons, and how would you divide that up? How much is being abandoned by your family? I mean...
Well, I mean, I think all these guys know, when I say all these guys, is people that are prosecuting know the kind of devastation that, and people don't really wrap their hands around that after they lose a trial or plea or are convicted or ended up going to jail, that, you know, you're not just going to jail. You're going to be wearing this, you know, scarlet letter for the rest of your life.
Right.
And, you know, there's some people that can come out and live meaningful lives,
Right.
and but I'd say the majority won't.
Right. Because you just have to be so resourceful to work around.
Yeah, I mean, or you're gonna have to really humble yourself. Probably, you know, take a job or jobs that they're beneath you.
Right. But you're talking about like professionals who have that ability to step down to it. I mean, some of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have doctors that are taking, you know, menial jobs,
Right.
potentially.
Right. And what about the guys at the lower rungs? They're just,
Well, I mean, they're gonna have to go and, you know, work for, you know, if they can get hired by a company like a FedEx or
Right.
UPS or whatever, and, you know, hopefully they can make 40, 50K a year and live.
Do those big companies hire?
I guess there are some that do, but again, you know, let's say you have a pool of applicants,
Right.
you know, it's hard enough to get a job.
Right.
I mean, I know the economy's gotten better and people are looking, you know, unemployment rates are down, but again, it's tough, and now you've got that extra mark on you.
Right.
they're going to is he going to steal from me? Is he going to commit another crime? Is he going to do this? I mean, it's always in the back of people's minds.
Right, yeah, of course. So what about so you said it wasn't very valuable for rehabilitation. What about for, counseling, or, people came in with addiction issues or mental health or something? What was it of any use for that, or what was the counseling and, addiction and all the kind of treatments? Was that of any meaning, or was that kind of...
As far as the counseling, I never really had any of that down there, so I can't really speak on that. I think there is some opportunity for people to talk to psychiatrists down there, psychologists, and work through their stuff, but
it's not a part of the program?
No.
You got to reach out?
You have to reach out, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you think she should know about the impact of this? This first step is good, but anything, either the personal side of it or any of the research that should be included?
Not really.
No? All right. Well, thank you.
If she has any more questions or specific areas that you want me to elaborate on or whatever, I'm here.
Okay.
But just to answer your questions, hopefully there's enough there for her to get something meaningful.
I'm sure there is. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.